There's this old retired pastor I know. I want to say older retired pastor, not old, older retired pastor. But he gave everything to the church for 40 plus years in ministry. Decades of funerals and weddings, painful visits and conversations, sermons written and rewritten, prayed over, and offered week after week after week after week. He baptized hundreds of children, must have, many of whom grew up, and then he married them and then baptized their kids. He buried the ones who died and sat with the ones left grieving. He showed up. He lived a life dedicated to the church, yes, but more importantly, to Christ and the work he was called to do, the work we're all called to do. And he believed. His faith was as sure as could be. It wasn't faith that made a lot of noise. It was a deep, passionate faith that shows up in the darkest moments. The kind of faith that keeps promises and trusts when trust is next to impossible. Even in retirement, he'd spend hours with me that he didn't have to. He just wanted that time, and so did I. He loved ministry. But now I find him in a valley that he did not choose. A valley that he cannot find his way out of, no matter how hard he might try, if he even knows he's in that valley. Because the mind that held so much, so many scriptures, so many names, so many faces, is letting things go. Nothing happens immediately, of course, but over time, some days worse than others. All those words once spoken as intentional, meaningful, faith-filled lessons now come harder, if at all. The familiar is less and less so. The people he loves most don't know what each day will bring. Will he even know them? And that is its own painful kind of grief for them and for him. There are times throughout the week when I'd normally give him a call and I go to grab my phone, but then I stop. And I suddenly remember and I wonder, not always, sometimes though, where's Jesus in that valley? This is a man who walked with Jesus his entire life. And not just himself, but he pointed hundreds, thousands of people to Jesus. He prayed in the name of Christ. He trusted in those promises that we proclaim right here each week. And now he's in this valley, and it gets deeper and darker by the month. The path is more and more uncertain. And I keep wondering, is Jesus walking with him? We all know someone like that in our lives. Maybe not in ministry specifically, but someone you know who did their best to live a faithful life. Someone we love, someone who is in a valley they cannot escape and in which we cannot seem to reach them. All we can do is just stand at the edge, helpless, and wonder the same thing. Where are you, Jesus? Did you forget them? Do you even know that they're down there right now in this moment? Maybe if we're honest with ourselves, we know we aren't just asking for them, we're asking for ourselves. We're begging for ourselves because in our faith, we find ourselves praying, I want Jesus to walk with me. When my heart is almost breaking, Lord, I want Jesus to walk with me. You know, to be honest, Psalm 23 sometimes feels a little cliche because everyone knows it, right? At most funerals and memorials, I'll invite everyone who's there to just say it with me because anyone who's spent any amount of time in a church, even as a kid, you learn this psalm, right? Right? It's the one that comes back to you as soon as you start listening. Maybe you think in Old King James, but that's still fine. And it's passages like that one, scriptures that have really broken through and out of the church into the secular world that I think like many pastors wonder, do these words still have the ability to hold the weight that we carry? I have moments when I think that Psalm 23 feels about the same as saying, well, God never gives you more than you can handle. But maybe we need to look at what the psalm is not saying. Right? Even though I walk through the darkest valley, David is telling us that we are going to walk through dark valleys in our life at some point. The shepherd is not promising a detour through the tricky parts. He promises something harder, but something truer, his presence within that valley. Did you guys ever hear the story of the guy who fell in a hole? I think it's a popular story, probably. This guy falls in a hole and he's screaming for help to get out. First, a doctor walks by and he says, "Hey, help me, I'm stuck in here." So the doctor writes a prescription, throws the paper into the hole, walks away. Next person up is a priest or a pastor. "Hey, help, I'm stuck down here." So the pastor writes out a prayer and throws it into the hole and walks away. Next person up is a friend of his who walks by. The guy calls out for help again, and the friend jumps straight into that hole. The man says, "What are you doing? Now we're both stuck down here." And the friend replies, "Yeah, but I've been down here before and I know the way." That is what Psalm 23 promises us this morning. A shepherd who has already been to the darkest valley imaginable and knows the way out for all of us. Remember, the psalm says, the table is set in the presence of my enemies, not somewhere safe, not at the highest peaks of our faith. The table is set in the presence of my enemies. God's presence, God's provisions, God's comfort, they all happen in the midst of the hardest times that we face. The true promise that Christ is making us today is not that we are free from any suffering, it's that we will never face it alone. So I think the reason these spirituals resonate, the reason they speak to us, is the truth underneath the words. They have the power to sit in the ruins of all we hold closest in our hearts. Think about it. In your darkest moments, it's probably not easy to start singing "Joyful, joyful, we adore thee." But we can certainly all sing, "In my trials, Lord, walk with me. When my head is bowed in sorrow, Lord, I want Jesus to walk with me." See, these songs were sung by people in the midst of unimaginable suffering. They live the pain that we feel in these words, but they also lived in the faith that we can hear in these words. These spirituals we're hearing this summer, they were not meant as fun little camp songs for kids. They are all painful cries from people suffering unimaginable cruelty, but they are also deeply theological. All of them going to wonder, where is Jesus? They ask, they cry, they plead that question. But they also answer it with a song like this one. All along my pilgrim journey, Lord, I want Jesus to walk with me. These singers knew the valley was real. They were in the darkest valley every day, and yet they sang out, "I want Jesus to walk with me." Where is Jesus? Friends, where is Jesus? He is sitting in the valley with them and with us. For those first singers, he was on that line with them as they sang this song, clearing a road, digging a ditch. And for us, he is in that valley too, even when we don't see it, even when we can't see it. He is in there with us always. So I know in my heart that he is in that valley too. Right alongside the retired pastor who is struggling every day, the one you all may be walking through, the one you all may be watching someone else journey through right now. Jesus is in there, even now, always. You know, with today being Father's Day, I'm wondering how many of you are going to go home, maybe find yourselves napping in a hammock later. I mean, come on, is there anything easier than falling asleep in one of those? It would have been nice if Jesus said in Matthew, instead of "for my yoke is easy and my burden is light," if he had just told us, "for my hammock is comfy and easy to sleep." But no, following Jesus does not mean an easy time. It means work. See, Jesus in that Matthew passage is not offering us a break from anything difficult. He's talking about strapping something on and keeping us working. Now, how many farmers do we have in here? I don't think many. I didn't think as I was reading these passages, we don't have a lot of farmers. So we may not realize you can't really yoke one animal. It's designed for two. The yoke Jesus offers is not easy because the workload is easy. It's easy because next to us in that yoke is Jesus Christ himself. When Jesus says, "Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens," this is for people who are exhausted from trying to carry alone something that was never intended to be carried alone, our faith. Jesus is not trying to tell us a life in his name is easy. He's saying we were never meant to do it on our own. It's also a promise to those of us watching others drift along. That burden is not ours to carry alone either. Because Jesus walks with us too. So he's not minimizing the risk or the cost of what he's asking us. Following him is still the hardest decision that any of us can make because it runs completely counter to the way the rest of the world wants us to live. He's also not promising that if we do live a faithful life, retirement will be like a nap in a hammock. But when we choose it, Jesus will always be walking right next to us. And so what I want you to know today, what I try to remind myself of every time I cry out about where Jesus is, it's our calling, it's our role. See, so often we see someone suffering, we have this natural desire to just rush in and fix it, to explain it, to hurry them through the process of grief so others don't have to be uncomfortable with their pain. Instead, what Jesus is telling us, what our spiritual reminds us of today, is that there's another choice, a more faithful choice, to sit and stay in the ruins with another one. We don't have to rush toward a resolution. We don't have to rush to find the exit to the valley. Faith should never be so fickle as to evaporate at the first sign of pain. We already know that a life in Christ is not a detour around suffering. The truth is that sometimes the valleys are much longer than any peaks, and there are no shortcuts through it. And if we are yoked to Christ, we are also yoked to one another, which means we all work together. We can't rush our way out of every valley. We cannot help someone if we are trying desperately to escape ourselves. Instead, we are called to take that long, painful road with them because we already know the way. Friends, today is the beginning of our summer journey into a world of spirituals. Each one of us will hear these spirituals. They're looking to help us hold a deeper, truthful reality of our lives, of faith, of discipleship, of the struggles we will deal with, of pains, and ultimately a deeper truth of the depth of the love that we experience in Jesus Christ. Today we're reminded that there are no easy ways out of those dark valleys, but God's presence is found directly within them, not above them from the peaks. So when we are watching others struggle in their valley, we can jump into that hole with them because we all do know the way. In moments when we feel we're lost, we aren't alone. We know the way. And we know the way because it is forever yoked to us. For me, when I cry out to God, I am reminded that Jesus is truly with him and his family. Even if all they can do is be present and support each other, they do make the valley a little more bearable, even if he doesn't fully know it. So when we cry out, don't send me alone. Today, Jesus tells us, you aren't alone. I am coming with you, always and forever. Amen.